Joining us now to discuss is Andy Bromberg. He's the currently the CEO at BitGo, a payments app startup. Hello there, Andy. Thanks for joining us. So, taking a look at the crypto outflows, the first time we're seeing more outflows in a while here. But Bitcoin briefly broke $25,000 early Monday morning. So, what's going on with Bitcoin?
It's a great question. Thanks for having me, by the way, on the show. I really appreciate it. What is going on with Bitcoin? I think what we've seen is that over the past few months, there's been a lot of turmoil in the crypto space writ large, a whole bunch of things blowing up or otherwise cascading down. And it's been uncertain ground for the past few months for Bitcoin. I think what we're seeing right now is an emergence from that people are beginning to feel a little more comfortable in the market. They feel like the damage has been done, the contagion has come and gone. And whether or not that's true, that's what people seem to be thinking and doing. And so that's then turning into perhaps Bitcoin finding a floor, although time will tell, and beginning to see a rise above $25,000, albeit briefly.
Where do you see that floor, and is 25,000 the resistance level?
25,000 certainly seems like a resistance level here. I'm always hesitant to cite a floor. If you look at where the market's been recently, it's maybe somewhere in the lower 20s, but it's very hard to say. I've been in this space now for 10 years, and I've learned one thing, which is that the market always goes higher than I think it ever will, and it always goes lower than I think it ever will. And so I'm hesitant to put a precise number on a floor.
So I mentioned investment from Arca. They're saying that Bitcoin isn't an inflation hedge, not a defensive play. It's correlated to the markets and it needs a new narrative. Now, Arca is very heavily invested in DeFi. I don't know if there's any bias there that could be debatable there, but I wonder what your thoughts are on, what they had to say.
Yeah, well, I think in the long term, Bitcoin's ambition is and always has been to be an independent asset and to be an inflation hedge at some point. But I don't think in order for it to be that eventually, it needs to be that today. I think if you just look at how Bitcoin's performed over the past few years, it has behaved more like a risk-on asset, more like a tech stock or like other crypto assets than like an inflation hedge. And I don't think that means that it can't be successful at what it's meant to do long term, but I do think it means it's not really doing it right now. And so that's fine. I think it's possible that Arca can say that Bitcoin needs to find a new narrative. I don't know that that's true. I think the narrative around Bitcoin as an inflation hedge is a true one, but it just has to be tempered with a little bit of knowledge about how early we are in the space and how much time there is for it to develop into that eventual state.
One of the biggest stories of the hour is this Galaxy deal. They're pulling out of their merger agreement with BitGo. BitGo was now suing them. This deal was supposed to close last year. Is this trouble case specific or more of a chilling effect we're seeing from the macro environment?
I have to imagine the macro environment did play into it. A lot of deals that were inked last year, over the last couple of years, were inked during a bull market when people were really optimistic about what was coming next. And now we've seen obviously a little bit of a drawdown from that. So I think the market has affected it, but I wouldn't put too much stock in that. I do think that it's probably a little bit more of a case-by-case basis here, that this specific transaction no longer makes sense to the buyer. And I wouldn't read too much into that. That's going to affect many other transactions going on right now. But certainly, I imagine in part driven by the market shifts, but I imagine the majority is just their own business priorities and decisions.
All right, Andy, last question. Where do you see Bitcoin headed by the end of the year?
Oh, like I said, it always goes higher than I ever think it will. It always goes lower than I ever think it will. I think it could go anywhere. I think we could see the highs that we saw over the past couple of years. I think we could see lower lows than we've seen in the past 6 months. And so it's really hard to say where it's going to go. I've learned that my price predictions are always wrong, so I don't make them anymore.